The first time Eleanor Hargrove set foot on my porch, the mountain morning was so still I could hear sap dripping from the Doug fir behind the cabin. I was on my knees, easing a century and a half of grime from a handad's beam with a scrap of burlap soaked in warm linseed oil. The scent was pure resurrection, cedar, history, and the promise that something broken could still be made whole. Then came the shriek. That cabin belongs to my son. Eleanor stood at the foot of my steps in a camel hair coat and heels sharp enough to stake vampires. She brandished a manila folder the way a revival preacher swings a Bible. Behind her, the Escalade idled like a tank waiting for orders. I rose slowly, 55 years in my knees reminding me gravity had opinions. "Morning, ma'am. Henry Whitaker. I've got the deed right inside if you'd like to." "I know exactly what you've got," she snapped. "Stolen property." That was the opening shot in a 6-month war nobody saw coming. Least of all me, a divorced Seattle architect who thought the worst thing left in life was quarterly alimony. Let me take you back to the day I first laid eyes on the place. It was February, the kind of cold that turns your breath to lace. I'd driven up from the city after spotting the county surplus listing at 2 in the morning, wired on bad coffee and worse memories. The ad was bare bones. 1872 log home. 2.4 acres, Ridgewood Heights. Needs complete restoration, $82,000 or best offer. The photos showed sagging ridges, missing chinking, and a stone foundation that looked like it had personally wrestled glaciers in one. I bid anyway. The auction room smelled of bleach and old coffee. 2 flippers in Patagonia vests took one look at the repair estimate and folded. I raised my paddle, heart hammering louder than the auctioneer's gavel. When he shouted sold, I felt the same jolt I'd once felt the day my grandfather let me drive his '54 Ford pickup, half terror, half destiny. The drive back up the mountain that afternoon was different. Snow dusted the evergreens like confectioner's sugar. I rolled the window down just to smell wood smoke and wet earth. By the time I parked on the gravel apron, I was grinning like a man who'd been handed a second life. Inside, the cabin spoke in creaks and whispers. 12-inch Douglas fir logs, dovetailed corners, a riverstone hearth wide enough to roast an elk. I ran my palm along a beam and felt the ghost of axe scars. My grandfather's voice drifted in. "Good work takes time, son. Measure twice, cut once." I measured everything that first week. Every sill, every joist, every scar in the puncheon floor. I slept on an air mattress under a tar paper roof that leaked in exactly 7 places. Each drip was a reminder. This was mine, paid in full, no co-signers, no contingencies. Then I found the root cellar. The trapdoor hid beneath a rag rug so threadbare it might have been woven during the Grant administration. I pried it up with a wonder bar and descended a ladder into cool darkness. The air smelled of apples and secrets. Behind a loose foundation stone, I found a tin box wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, Clarence Drummond's journal, bound in saddle leather, pages soft as flannel. Clarence wrote in a carpenter's pencil, letters small and neat. Most entries were practical: snow depth, elk sightings, the year the chimney cracked. But every few pages a darker thread appeared. Yates tried another dodge today. Sold our mill run to a side buyer in Spokane, told the crew the planer broke. I keep copies. Always keep copies. Yates was Earl Hargrove, Eleanor's late husband. By the time I'd read 3 months of entries, I understood 2 things. Clarence had trusted no one, and Earl had robbed him blind. I should have locked the journal in a safe and forgotten it. Instead, I kept reading by lantern light, the way you keep picking at a scab because the sting feels honest. Eleanor's second visit came on a Thursday when the sky hung low and metallic. I was on the roof, replacing cedar shakes, when the Escalade crunched up the drive. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "You've been served," she called, waving a crimson folder. "Heritage Preservation Committee findings. Work stops today." The violations read like satire. Modern wiring in a structure predating electricity. LED bulbs violating 1872 ambience. Flush toilet offending pioneer authenticity. I climbed down, boots thudding on fresh planks. "Ma'am, the county inspector signed off on every permit." "County doesn't run Ridgewood Heights," she said, smiling the way a cat smiles at a canary with a broken wing. "I do." That night, I phoned Abigail Reed. the only attorney in Seattle who advertised HOA harassment, free 15-minute consult. Her voicemail promised a return call within the hour. It came in 12 minutes. Mr. Whitaker, tell me everything. And whatever you do, don't delete a single photo. Documentation became my new religion. I bought a Wi-Fi camera system that uploaded to the cloud every 10 seconds. I time-stamped receipts, recorded conversations, legal in Washington with one-party consent, and kept a spiral notebook the way Clarence kept his journal. The fines arrived daily, $500 each, mailed in envelopes that smelled faintly of Eleanor's rosewater perfume. I paid none. Abigail said let them stack. Unpaid fines from an unregistered HOA were just expensive confetti. Neighbors trickled in after dark, the way people visit a speakeasy. Ruth McAllister brought oatmeal cookies and 20 years of grievances. Mark and Lisa Brennan arrived with a six-pack and a laptop full of their own violation letters. We sat on sawhorses under a trouble light and traded war stories like veterans swapping shrapnel scars. Ruth leaned forward, voice low. Eleanor's sister-in-law chairs the architectural committee. Her cousin runs the management company. They vote themselves stipends from the Heritage Fund. Last year it paid for Travis's DUI lawyer. Mark spun his laptop. Watch this. Grainy footage showed Travis testing my doorknob at 2:14 a.m. He had a key. I felt the old divorce rage rise. Hot, useless, familiar. Then I heard my grandfather again. Never let a bully back you into a corner. We built a coalition the way carpenters frame a house. One stud, one nail, one true plumb line at a time. The vandalism began small. Air let out of tires, mail scattered like confetti. Then came the night my front windows exploded inward at 3:07 a.m. Shards glittered across the puncheon floor like broken stars. The security camera caught Travis in a black hoodie, face illuminated by the spray paint can's glow, Whitaker out in dripping red. Abigail filed trespass and vandalism reports before breakfast. The sheriff's deputy, a young woman named Rodriguez, watched the footage without blinking. We'll need the original files, she said. And Mr. Whitaker, keep those cameras rolling. Eleanor's next move was a masterpiece of desperation. She scheduled an emergency HOA meeting. Invitation only, loyalists plus a quorum of terrified yes-men. The agenda, retroactive architectural standards, and a special assessment to fund litigation against the Whitaker threat. Ruth crashed the meeting with a casserole and a smile sharp as a chisel. She recorded every word on her phone. When Eleanor demanded the floor recognize only concerned legacy residents, Ruth stood. I've lived here 42 years, she said. My husband poured the foundation of this community with his own hands. You don't get to decide who belongs. The room went still enough to hear ice melt. 2 days later, the county clerk received an anonymous envelope, meeting minutes, financial ledgers, and a thumb drive of Ruth's recording. Within a week, the state HOA Oversight Board opened an audit. Eleanor countered with a fake gas leak. I was installing a reclaimed fur mantle when the Escalade roared up, followed by a fire marshal's truck. Eleanor waved a beeping detector that turned out to be a smoke alarm with a dying battery. Evacuate immediately, she shouted to the cameras. She pretended not to notice. Deputy Rodriguez arrived before the fire crew finished their coffee. She watched Eleanor discover a violation tag on my brand-new breaker box, then quietly cuffed her for filing a false report. That was the night Walter Hargrove knocked on my door. He stood on the porch in a barn coat 2 sizes too big, eyes red from crying or whiskey or both. I can't do this anymore, he said. She's destroying everything. Over coffee strong enough to float nails. Walter laid out 20 years of complicity, signature stamps, forged invoices, threats whispered to neighbors who couldn't afford another fine. He handed me a flash drive. Everything, he said. Bank records, emails, the works. Tell Abigail I'll testify. The partnership dissolution papers were the kill shot. Abigail found them in a box marked, closed 1968, do not destroy. Earl Hargrove's signature, big, loopy, drunk with ink, waived all future interest in Drummond lands. Beside it, Clarence's neat note, paid in full. Let no man revisit this grave. We served Eleanor at her own mailbox. She read the first page, went white beneath her salon tan, and dropped the papers like they were on fire. The public hearing filled the county courthouse to the rafters. 3 news crews, 2 documentary teams, and a retired judge who drove 3 hours just to watch justice served hot. Ruth testified first, voice steady as the ridgepole she'd helped raise in 1974. Mark played the vandalism montage on a screen the size of a barn door. Lisa read impact statements from 12 families forced out by Eleanor's reign. Then Eleanor took the stand. She wore a prison orange jumpsuit that clashed with her dye job. For 15 minutes, she ranted about liberal conspiracies, stolen heritage, and the sacred rights of founding families. When the judge asked if she had anything to add, she pointed at me. "That man destroyed my family." I stood when invited. The room hushed. "Mrs. Hargrove," I said, "you didn't lose a family legacy. You lost the right to terrorize your neighbors. This cabin didn't belong to your son. It belonged to a man who kept every receipt, including the one that proved your husband walked away 60 years ago. You bullied, you embezzled, you broke windows in the dark. And every time you did, ordinary people measured twice, documented once, and refused to flinch. That's the only inheritance that matters." The applause started in the back row and rolled forward like thunder. Deputies let it run 30 seconds before the gavel fell. Sentence: 11 years federal, $750,000 restitution, permanent ban from any HOA board in the Pacific Northwest. Travis entered court-ordered rehab and stayed. Walter moved to Spokane, took a job framing houses, and learned to swing a hammer without looking over his shoulder. 6 months later, Ridgewood Heights smelled different. No more fear laced with rosewater. Kids biked past my cabin without checking for Eleanor's Escalade. The Heritage Fund, now audited by a retired CPA who volunteered his weekends, paid for a community workshop where teenagers learned to scribe logs the way Clarence did. My cabin hosts Saturday open houses. Folks sip coffee on the porch, trace axe marks in the beams, and leave with a pamphlet Abigail wrote. Your rights when the HOA forgets who owns the dirt. The Mountain Justice Workshop tours the Pacific Northwest. We teach documentation, coalition building, and the one thing no bully can stand: sunlight. Some nights I sit on the porch with Emily, curator at the Historical Society, keeper of stories in my heart, and watch the Milky Way spill across the ridge. The cabin creaks the way old friends clear their throats before telling the truth. Grandfather was right. Good work takes time. Now it's your turn. Scroll down and tell me in the comments. When is it right to fight fire with a blowtorch? Have you ever stood up to a bully and paid a price? Or won a victory that changed everything? Lay out your stance, no filter. The algorithm feeds on passion, and so does justice. Measure twice, cut once, and never, ever let them back you into a corner.